The laughter echoed through the marble lobby so loudly that every employee stopped walking. A billionaire businesswoman looked down at a tired single father wearing dusty work boots, faded blue overalls, and carrying a heavy toolbox. She laughed because he was only a plumber. She laughed because his clothes smelled of hard work instead of expensive perfume. She laughed because she believed people like him would never belong inside a luxury office tower. But before the sun disappeared behind the city's skyline, ownership of that very building would unexpectedly change hands. The man she had humiliated would become the new owner, and the woman who mocked him would stand frozen in disbelief as her entire world shifted in a single afternoon. Before we continue, if you believe kindness always matters more than wealth, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to Single Dad Empire. Your support helps us continue sharing emotional stories that remind the world humanity still matters. Early that bright spring morning, the city was already alive with movement. Office workers hurried along clean sidewalks carrying coffee cups while buses filled with commuters stopped at every corner. Among the crowd walked Graham Holloway, a 44-year-old single father whose strong hands carried years of honest labor. His faded blue plumbing uniform had been washed hundreds of times until its original color had nearly disappeared. His dark brown hair was neatly trimmed, his beard carefully maintained despite limited time, and his calm gray eyes reflected a quiet determination that life had never managed to break. Every morning before work, Graham prepared breakfast for his 11-year-old son, Owen, whose cheerful personality helped fill the empty space left behind after the passing of his mother several years earlier. Owen dreamed of becoming an architect one day. Instead of asking for expensive toys, he spent afternoons sketching buildings on recycled paper while waiting for his father to finish work. Graham often promised that although they could not afford much today, tomorrow would always offer another opportunity if they continued working with honesty. That particular morning Graham received an emergency service request from one of the city's tallest commercial buildings, the prestigious Ashford Financial Center. A burst water pipe threatened several executive offices, and building management needed immediate repairs before important investors arrived. Without wasting a minute, Graham loaded his tools into his aging white service van and drove across the city beneath clear blue skies. The Ashford Financial Center represented everything Graham had never experienced. The polished marble entrance reflected sunlight through enormous glass walls. Luxury cars lined the private entrance while professionally dressed executives entered carrying designer briefcases. Security guards stood beside polished brass doors welcoming influential visitors with respectful smiles. Graham quietly carried his heavy toolbox through the lobby. Some employees barely noticed him. Others simply stepped aside. Then came the moment that changed everything. Descending the grand staircase surrounded by assistants was Vivian Sterling, a 40-year-old billionaire real estate executive known throughout the country for building one of the largest commercial property empires in America. Her tailored ivory business suit, elegant pearl earrings, and perfectly styled black hair reflected success that few could imagine. Business magazines admired her confidence. Investors praised her aggressive leadership. Employees feared disappointing her. As Vivian crossed the lobby, she noticed Graham's worn boots leaving faint water marks across the polished marble floor after walking through the rainy construction entrance. She paused. Her expression shifted from curiosity to visible amusement. Several nearby executives smiled nervously as she openly questioned whether someone dressed like that truly belonged inside one of the city's most prestigious office buildings. Her comments, though delivered with effortless confidence, carried enough disrespect to embarrass the hardworking plumber before dozens of strangers. The laughter spread quickly. Some employees looked away uncomfortably. Others quietly returned to their work. Graham never responded with anger. Instead, he politely apologized for the footprints, removed a clean towel from his toolbox, and personally wiped every mark from the marble floor before continuing toward the damaged mechanical room. His dignity remained untouched. Inside the building's basement, Graham discovered that the leaking pipe was only a symptom of a much larger problem. Years of neglected maintenance had weakened several sections of the aging plumbing system. Instead of performing the fastest temporary repair, he spent extra time reinforcing vulnerable connections to prevent future emergencies, even though no one would ever notice the additional effort. For Graham, honest work meant solving problems completely. Not simply making them disappear until the next invoice. By early afternoon the building's entire water system operated perfectly again. He quietly submitted his report and left without expecting recognition. Meanwhile, across town, another story unfolded. Months earlier, Graham's late grandfather had passed away peacefully, leaving behind what everyone believed was nothing more than a modest countryside farmhouse. Graham had delayed settling the estate because work and raising Owen consumed nearly every hour of his life. That afternoon, while finishing another plumbing appointment, Graham received a call from an attorney requesting an urgent meeting. Confused but curious, he drove directly to the law office. There he learned a family secret that had remained hidden for decades. Long before Graham was born, his grandfather had quietly invested in commercial real estate alongside several close friends. Most properties had been sold years earlier, but one investment remained protected inside a private family trust. That investment happened to be a controlling ownership interest in Ashford Financial Center. Over the years the property's value had increased dramatically while professional trustees managed everything anonymously. After legal fees and taxes, Graham had unexpectedly inherited majority ownership of the entire building. He sat silently, unable to speak. His thoughts immediately turned toward Owen. College. A stable home. A future free from constant financial worry. Yet none of those dreams erased the memory of being laughed at only hours earlier inside the very building he now legally owned. News traveled quickly. Corporate attorneys immediately contacted existing management to announce the ownership transition. Emergency board meetings filled the afternoon schedule. Employees whispered throughout every hallway. No one had expected the quiet plumber to become the building's principal owner before sunset. Vivian received the announcement while reviewing investment reports inside her executive office. At first she assumed it was an administrative misunderstanding. Then official legal documents arrived. Every signature had been verified. Every transfer approved. Every financial record confirmed. The humble plumber she had publicly embarrassed now possessed final authority over the building where she managed daily operations. For the first time in many years, certainty disappeared from Vivian's face. The next morning bright daylight filled the city once again. Employees gathered unusually early, curious to meet the mysterious new owner. Luxury vehicles continued arriving. Executives adjusted expensive suits. Security guards stood straighter than usual. Then an old white plumbing van slowly entered the parking garage. Several workers smiled with disbelief. Graham stepped out wearing the same faded blue uniform he had worn the previous day. He had not purchased expensive clothes. He had not hired bodyguards. He had not changed. Only his responsibilities had. Instead of walking directly into executive offices, Graham visited every maintenance employee first. Janitors, electricians, receptionists, security officers, landscapers, and cafeteria workers each received a personal handshake and sincere thanks for keeping the building running every day. Many had worked there for years without ever speaking personally to ownership. That morning changed everything. When Graham finally entered the executive conference room, silence immediately filled the space. Vivian stood waiting alongside senior managers. Her confident posture had softened into visible humility. She quietly acknowledged that she had judged someone based entirely upon appearance rather than character. She admitted that success had slowly convinced her that expensive clothing represented intelligence while physical labor represented lesser value. The realization embarrassed her deeply. Graham listened patiently. He carried no bitterness. Instead of discussing revenge, he spoke about responsibility. He explained that buildings remained standing because countless invisible workers repaired pipes, cleaned hallways, maintained electrical systems, and protected every person inside. Without those people, even billion-dollar companies would stop functioning within days. Real leadership, he believed, began by respecting every contribution regardless of job title. His word spread throughout the organization. Employees who had once felt unnoticed suddenly discovered renewed pride in their work. Maintenance budgets increased. Safety improvements began immediately. Employee appreciation programs expanded. Training opportunities reached departments previously ignored. Productivity quietly improved because respect had replaced fear. Vivian also changed. Rather than resigning, she asked to remain and help modernize the property under Graham's leadership. She visited maintenance teams personally, learning about challenges she had never considered before. For the first time since building her fortune, she realized leadership involved listening far more than speaking. Months passed. Ashford Financial Center became known throughout the city not only as one of the finest office buildings but also as one of the best workplaces. Employee turnover dropped dramatically. Businesses requested office space because the atmosphere encouraged cooperation rather than competition. Meanwhile, Graham continued living inside the same modest home with Owen. He still drove his old service van several days each week because fixing broken plumbing reminded him where his journey had begun. Owen noticed something remarkable. His father smiled more often. Not because he had become wealthy. Because he had gained the opportunity to improve other people's lives. One Saturday morning Graham brought Owen to the building. Together they walked through bright hallways filled with smiling employees. Receptionists greeted Owen by name. Security guards proudly showed him the rooftop garden recently created for workers. Janitors happily described new equipment that made their jobs safer and easier. Owen quietly realized his father's greatest achievement had never been becoming rich. It had been earning genuine respect. Standing beside large windows overlooking the busy daytime city, Graham reminded his son that people would always remember how someone treated others long after they forgot bank account numbers or business titles. Those words remained with Owen forever. Years later he would become an architect who designed affordable community centers instead of luxury mansions because he understood that buildings existed to serve people, not impress them. Vivian often reflected upon that unforgettable afternoon when she laughed at a plumber carrying a heavy toolbox. She realized that moment had become the most valuable lesson of her entire career. Success without humility created loneliness. Power without kindness created fear. Wealth without respect carried very little meaning. The man she once overlooked had unknowingly become the greatest teacher she had ever met. If this story touched your heart, please support this video by liking, sharing, and leaving a heartfelt comment below. Subscribe to Single Dad Empire if you enjoy emotional stories that celebrate kindness, humility, and hope. Your support helps these inspiring stories reach more people around the world. Special request: before you leave, comment, "Respect every worker," if you believe no job is too small and every honest profession deserves dignity. As another clear daytime morning filled Ashford Financial Center with light, Graham watched employees from every department greet one another with genuine smiles. The marble floors looked exactly the same as they had the day he was mocked, yet everything else had changed. Not because ownership had changed hands, but because one humble single father proved that true greatness is never measured by wealth, expensive clothes, or powerful titles. It is measured by the quiet strength to remain kind after being disrespected, the courage to forgive when revenge seems easier, and the wisdom to lift others even after life finally lifts you. In the end, the building did not simply gain a new owner, it gained a leader whose greatest fortune had always been the character he carried long before anyone knew his name.